I thought it was just a bad dream, but the moment I realized it wasn't, my heart sank. My daughter-in-law had changed the locks while I was at my husband's funeral. My own home locked me out. My name is Margaret Williams, I'm 63 years old, and my life was turned upside down the day my husband passed. It wasn't just the grief of losing him, it was what came after. I never imagined that the woman I had welcomed into my family, my son's wife, would betray me like this. We had always been close, or so I thought. 4 years I cooked dinners, helped with the kids, and tried to keep the family together. But as soon as my husband died, everything changed. I left for the funeral, thinking my house would be waiting for me when I returned. I thought that at least in the face of death, my family would be there for me. But as soon as I walked up to my door, I knew something was terribly wrong. The locks had been changed. I stood there, frozen for a moment, trying to comprehend what was happening. Was I mistaken? Did I forget something? No, I was certain. I tried calling my son, but he didn't pick up. I rang the doorbell, hoping maybe there was a mistake, but nothing. Not a soul in sight. My hands trembled as I fumbled for my keys, knowing they wouldn't work. The house that had been mine for over 30 years, the home I built with my husband, was now closed off to me. I walked around to the back of the house, but no luck. Every window was locked tight, every door sealed shut. As the sun began to set, the weight of what was happening hit me all at once. I felt like a stranger in my own life, forced to face the harsh reality that my daughter-in-law had taken matters into her own hands, making decisions about my future without my knowledge. And that wasn't the worst of it. As I turned to leave, my eyes caught the faintest glimmer of something on the porch, a small security camera, placed just high enough to be out of sight, but not enough to be unnoticed. In that moment I realized she had watched me every step I took. The betrayal was not just in the locks, it was in the silent cameras, the cold indifference, and the fact that I had been completely locked out of my own life. The next day I stood in front of the locked door, still in shock. My hands shook as I stared at the house, now foreign to me. I had never felt so small, so invisible in my own life. For hours I tried to make sense of it. My mind raced, my thoughts jumbled. What had happened? Why had Rachel done this? I had no answers. My son William still hadn't called back, and Rachel, she was nowhere to be found. I could only stand there, staring at the place that had been home for decades. I thought about the memories it held, the family dinners, the laughter, the way my husband, Tom, and I had worked together to build this life. Now it felt like it all had been erased, reduced to a cold, empty house with no place for me. It wasn't just the locks. It was everything that came with it. The subtle but steady changes in Rachel's behavior after Tom passed. How she started making decisions without consulting me. How her smiles became more forced. And how my son started to withdraw. I had chalked it up to grief. But this felt like something more calculated. I decided to go to the only place where I thought I could get answers, the bank. I had to be sure. Maybe something had happened with the house. Maybe Rachel had some sort of legal reason for changing the locks. But when I arrived at the bank, the answers I got only added to my confusion. The account that held the property papers was mysteriously altered. I left the bank feeling like I had been hit by a truck. It wasn't just the locks or the house, it was everything. I had been pushed out of my own life, and nobody had told me. They didn't even have the decency to let me know what was going on. Rachel and William. Did they think I wouldn't notice? Or did they simply not care? My heart felt heavy as I drove back home, unsure of what to do next. All I knew was that something had to be done. I couldn't let this go. But what could I do? I wasn't young anymore, and I certainly wasn't equipped to deal with this kind of betrayal. The weight of the past few days was crushing, but something inside me stirred. I couldn't just stand by. Not when everything I had worked for was being taken from me. I couldn't just sit there anymore, helpless and confused. I needed answers, and I needed them fast. It had been a few days since I was locked out, and the silence was unbearable. I had avoided confronting Rachel, afraid of what she might say, afraid of what I might hear. But no more. I needed to know what was going on, whether my suspicions were right, and whether I was truly being left out of my own life. So, I decided to confront William. I called him again, but as expected, he didn't answer. Frustrated, I drove to his house. When I arrived, I saw Rachel's car in the driveway. It wasn't a surprise. She was always there, always around, making decisions without consulting me. But today I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I knocked on the door, and when William opened it, his face seemed startled, almost as if he had been expecting something else. "Mom, what are you doing here?" he asked, looking guilty. I didn't even let him finish his sentence. "We need to talk," I said, my voice firm. We walked inside, and Rachel was sitting on the couch, her eyes flicking nervously between me and William. I could tell she wasn't expecting this confrontation. I could feel the tension in the room as I began to speak, my words steady but full of anger. "You changed the locks on my house," I said, keeping my gaze locked on Rachel. "What's going on?" William didn't say anything at first. He just stood there avoiding my eyes. Rachel, however, didn't miss a beat. "I thought it was time for a change," she said, her voice dripping with feigned sweetness. "You're not getting any younger, Margaret. It's just practical." My blood ran cold. Practical? This wasn't about practicality, it was about control. Practical. I repeated, my voice rising. "You think this is practical?" William finally spoke, his voice quieter than usual. "Mom, Rachel's right. We've been talking about this for a while. We thought it would be easier if you moved on. You don't need all this space anymore." I felt my stomach drop. "Moved on?" I asked, barely able to believe what I was hearing. "This is my home," I said, shaking my head in disbelief. "Your father and I worked our whole lives for this place. And now you're just throwing me out." Rachel smiled, but it wasn't a warm smile. It was cold, calculated. "It's for the best, Margaret. You'll see. Just think about it. A smaller place, less work, less stress." I felt a tightness in my chest. "I don't need you to decide what's best for me," I said, my voice trembling with a mix of rage and hurt. But I wasn't going to cry. Not here. Not now. Not for them. I turned to leave, but before I did, I glanced back at Rachel. "This isn't over," I said, my words carrying more weight than I intended. "I'll figure this out. You haven't heard the last of me." It was a few days after the confrontation that I finally started to process everything. The anger was still there, but a quiet determination had begun to settle in. I wasn't going to let Rachel and William take my home from me, not without a fight. I sat in my living room, the room that had witnessed so many family gatherings, the place where my husband and I had spent countless evenings together. It was hard to believe that the walls, which once echoed with laughter and love, now seemed cold and empty. But I couldn't focus on that now. I needed to act. The first step was getting the legal documents in order. I contacted my lawyer, someone I had known for years, though I had never expected to need him in this way. As I sat in his office explaining the situation, I could see his face change from polite concern to something more serious. "Margaret," he said after a long pause, "you've been taken advantage of. This is more than just changing locks. It's an attempt to take control of your assets and push you out of your own life." His words hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about my dignity, my life, and everything I had worked so hard for. I left the lawyer's office with a renewed sense of purpose. I knew what I had to do. Over the next few days, I began gathering evidence. I started going through old files, receipts, and even checking the security footage from the cameras around the house. I had no idea what I was going to find, but I had to be sure. The more I dug, the more I uncovered. It wasn't just Rachel's actions I had to worry about. It was the way William had been complicit. He had allowed this to happen, and worse, he had been part of the plan all along. He had been distant, avoiding any real conversations about the future of the house or my role in it. Everything was falling into place, and I realized that I had to take control before it was too late. But I wasn't going to do it in a way that they expected. I wasn't going to storm in and shout at them. No, I would be patient. I would make them think they had one. And then, when the time was right, I would strike. I would reclaim my life, and I would not let them take anything else from me. I had taken my time, carefully planning each step, and now it was finally time to execute. I felt a calmness wash over me, a sense of quiet power that I hadn't felt in a long time. I wasn't going to let Rachel or William continue to manipulate me. I had to outsmart them. The first thing I did was schedule a meeting with the real estate agent. I knew the house was mine, but I needed to know how I could protect it. I wasn't about to let them sell it out from under me. The agent was professional, asking me all the right questions, and I could see she understood the urgency of the situation. I explained that I was going to take legal action, but I wanted to make sure I had all the details in place. As she went over the property records and confirmed everything was in order, I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. At least one part of this puzzle was falling into place. I also knew that I had to take action on the legal front. I had already consulted my lawyer, and we had started preparing the necessary paperwork to challenge the changes Rachel and William had made. The truth was, I didn't need to sell the house. I just needed to make sure they couldn't take it from me. As the days went by, I kept a low profile. I went about my daily routine, but inside I was calculating every move. I knew that Rachel and William were probably expecting me to make a scene, to confront them head-on. But that wasn't the way I was going to handle it. I let them think they had won, let them believe they had the upper hand. Meanwhile, I continued gathering evidence, making sure I had everything I needed. It was a waiting game now. I couldn't move too quickly or they would catch on. I had to be patient. And as I waited, I reminded myself that the hardest part was over. I had taken the first step, and now I was just one move away from taking back control of my life. I wasn't going to be anyone's victim. Not now. Not ever. The day of the final confrontation came sooner than I expected. William called me. His voice was different, almost nervous. "Mom," he said, "can we talk? I think we need to figure this out." I knew it was time. I didn't respond right away. I simply agreed to meet him the next morning, knowing exactly what I was going to say. This time, I wasn't going to leave without the answers I deserved. The morning of the confrontation arrived, and I felt a calm determination settle over me. I was prepared. William's call had caught me off guard, but I knew this was my chance to put everything into motion. I didn't hurry to get ready. I made sure to take my time, fixing a cup of coffee and sitting in my favorite chair, letting the warmth of the drink seep into me as I prepared myself for what was to come. The house was quiet, but the silence didn't bother me as much anymore. It was almost comforting, a sign that I had taken control of my space once again. As I walked out to my car, I noticed the familiar creak of the front steps under my weight. I had lived here for so long, yet now everything felt different. Still, I wasn't about to let the weight of the past overwhelm me. I arrived at the cafe where we had agreed to meet. It was a small, quiet place not far from home, the kind of place where no one would overhear your conversation. I took a deep breath before stepping inside, scanning the room for William. He was already there, sitting at a corner table, his back to the wall, and his eyes focused on his phone. When he saw me, his face fell. He looked almost guilty, but there was also a hint of frustration in his eyes, as if he wasn't sure what was going to happen next. I sat down across from him without saying a word. He seemed to hesitate before speaking, but I wasn't about to make it easy for him. "Mom," he began, his voice unsure. "I know things have been tense between us lately, but we need to figure this out." His words were exactly what I expected, but they didn't affect me the way he hoped they would. I folded my hands in front of me, looking at him calmly. "Figure what out, William?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "You and Rachel have made it perfectly clear what you want. You don't need to pretend like you're doing this for my good anymore." He shifted in his seat, clearly uncomfortable. "It's not like that," he said, his voice quieter now. "We've been thinking about what's best for everyone. The house is too much for you to handle alone, and Rachel has been trying to help." I couldn't hold back the sharpness in my tone any longer. "Help? Or control me?" I asked. "You've been taking everything from me, piece by piece, and I've had enough. I'm not going to let you push me out of my own life." William looked down, unable to meet my eyes. "Mom, I never meant for it to go this far. I just thought." "You thought wrong," I interrupted, my voice firm now. "I won't be pushed aside, not like this. Not by you, and certainly not by Rachel." I sat back, taking a deep breath. "This isn't over, William," I said, my words final. "I will fight for what's mine, and I will make sure you understand exactly what that means." The next few days were filled with silence, but it wasn't the kind of silence that brought peace. It was the kind of silence that gnawed at me, reminding me of everything I had lost. Rachel's absence was deafening, and William was still distant, his apologies feeling more like obligations than genuine regret. But that was fine, I didn't need their apologies. What I needed was action. It was time to act on my plan, and I wasn't going to waste any more time. I spent the next couple of days gathering everything I could find. Documents, old letters, any legal records I could get my hands on. The more I looked, the clearer it became that Rachel's actions were part of something much bigger. She wasn't just trying to push me out. She was trying to take control of everything. I felt a pit in my stomach as I looked through old receipts and legal papers. She had been setting this up for months, if not longer. And William, he was either too blinded by her manipulation or too scared to see the truth. Either way, I couldn't rely on him to fix this. It had to be me. As I sat at my kitchen table, the same one I had shared with Tom for so many years, I thought about what had been done to me. I wasn't just being pushed out of the house. I was being erased from my own life, my own family. But I wasn't going to let them get away with it. I wasn't going to let Rachel tear everything down and pretend like it was all for my good. No, I would fight for what was mine, and I would make sure they knew exactly what that meant. The next step was clear. I needed to make Rachel and William see that I wasn't as powerless as they thought. I wasn't going to beg them for my place in this family. I would take back what was mine. And that meant I had to be smart. I couldn't rush in blindly. I had to be patient. I knew that if I waited long enough, they would make a mistake. And when they did, I would be ready. That night, I sat in my living room, the quiet heavy around me. But instead of feeling lost, I felt more certain than I had in days. I wasn't just a mother. I wasn't just a widow. I was Margaret Williams, and I wasn't going to let anyone take my life from me. The days dragged on, but I kept my focus, not allowing myself to be distracted by the weight of the situation. The house felt emptier than ever, but instead of despair, I felt a strange sense of resolve building inside me. I knew it was only a matter of time before Rachel and William would slip up. They thought I was out of the game, but I was just biding my time. I hadn't made a move yet, but I was preparing. I had learned everything I could about the legal steps needed to protect my home. I had reached out to a trusted lawyer, and we were building a case. It wasn't going to be easy, but I knew it was the only way to make them understand that I wasn't going to just disappear. It wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about my dignity, my right to be a part of my family. One evening, a week after our last conversation, I received a text from William. It was short, just a few words. "Can we talk tomorrow? It's important." I stared at the message for a long time, trying to decide if this was the moment I had been waiting for. Was he finally realizing what he had done? Or was this just another attempt to placate me, to make me believe they cared? I decided I wasn't going to wait for him to make the next move. I was going to take control, but in a way they wouldn't expect. The next morning, I met William at a cafe near his office. This time, I wasn't going to let him dictate the conversation. I sat down, and for a moment there was nothing but silence. He looked uncomfortable, shifting in his seat. I had a feeling he wasn't ready for what was coming. "What's going on, William?" I asked, my voice calm but firm. He looked at me for a moment, like he was searching for the right words. "Mom, I think we've been going about this all wrong," he finally said. "I didn't want things to get this complicated, but I think we can fix it." I took a slow breath, letting his words hang in the air. "Fix it?" I repeated, a slight edge creeping into my voice. "You think you can fix this by just talking? You took my home from me, William. You've been making decisions about my life without even asking me. And now you want to fix it with words." He flinched, clearly not expecting my response. But I wasn't going to back down. "No. More talking. If you want to fix this, it's going to take more than that," I said. I wasn't sure if he understood the gravity of what I was saying, but I was done playing their game. I was taking control, and I wasn't going to let them walk all over me any longer. The following days were filled with a tense calmness. I had made it clear to William that I wasn't going to let this go, but there was still so much to figure out. I spent more time planning, carefully considering every move. Felt like a game now, but this time I was in control. The next step was to gather everything I needed: proof, documents, and the final pieces of the puzzle that Rachel and William had tried so hard to hide. I spent the days after our meeting organizing my thoughts, preparing for the next confrontation. I wasn't going to let them think they could walk all over me. I was tired of being quiet, tired of being the one who simply followed their lead. This time I was going to be the one to decide what happened next. As I reviewed the papers, the evidence of their plan became clearer. It wasn't just the house. It was the control they were trying to take over everything I held dear. They had been methodical, systematic in their efforts, but they underestimated me. I wasn't some passive bystander. I had built my life, my family, my home. I was not going to lose it. I spent a few hours drafting a letter. It wasn't a letter of anger or resentment, but of firm resolve. I needed them to understand that this wasn't just about a house. This was about my life. I wasn't going to be shut out. I wasn't going to be dismissed. The letter was clear, concise, and to the point. It wasn't an ultimatum. It was a statement of what was to come. After all, I had learned that the quietest battles were often the most powerful. The next morning, I sent the letter to William and Rachel. I didn't hear from them right away, but that was fine. I wasn't in a rush anymore. I knew they would respond in their own time. The silence that followed was almost comforting. It was the calm before the storm. As I waited, I began to feel a sense of power that I hadn't felt in years. I was finally taking control of my own destiny. No more waiting. No more second-guessing myself. I knew this wasn't going to be easy, but it was the right thing to do. I would get what I deserved, and I would do it on my terms. Days passed, and I still hadn't heard back from William or Rachel. I knew they were likely planning their next move, trying to figure out how to deal with the letter I'd sent. But I wasn't worried. I had already prepared myself for this moment. I knew what I needed to do, and I wasn't about to back down now. That evening, as I sat at the kitchen table, I couldn't help but think about everything that had led up to this. The years of hard work, the sacrifices I made for my family, the way I had always put them first. And yet here I was fighting for my own place in my own life. The unfairness of it all still stung, but it only made me more determined. The next morning I received a call from William. His voice was different this time, nervous, almost unsure. "Mom, we need to talk," he said. "Rachel and I have been discussing things, and we think it's time to figure this out." I could feel the weight of the conversation hanging in the air, but I wasn't about to let him dictate the terms. "What is there to figure out?" I replied, my tone steady. "You've already made it clear what you want. Rachel has made it clear. Now it's my turn to make it clear to both of you." There was a long pause on the other end of the line before William spoke again, his voice softer this time. "I don't want to lose you, Mom, but Rachel thinks it's best for you to move on. We thought we were helping." I closed my eyes, trying to steady my breath. This was it, the moment I had been waiting for. "Helping?" I repeated, my voice firm. "You think pushing me out of my home is helping? You've been making decisions about my life without even asking me. This isn't about helping, William. It's about control. And I'm done letting you control me." The silence that followed was thick, but I didn't back down. I wasn't going to let them make me feel guilty for wanting what was mine. "I've worked my whole life for this house," I continued, my voice unwavering. "And I'm not going anywhere. I will fight for what's mine, and you can either be a part of that, or you can step aside." After a long moment, William finally spoke. "I never meant for things to go this far, Mom. But if you're serious about this, we'll figure something out. I'm not giving up on you." I could hear the sincerity in his voice, but I wasn't sure if it was too little, too late. Still, I wasn't about to let my guard down just yet. "We'll see," I said quietly, knowing that the battle wasn't over yet. It had just begun. The next few days were filled with a strange sense of waiting, but I wasn't idle. I kept working on my case, gathering more evidence, and preparing myself for the inevitable confrontation. William and Rachel had finally responded, and though it wasn't the full admission I had been hoping for, it was a start. They had agreed to a meeting, and I knew this would be the turning point. I wasn't sure what they thought would come out of it, but I was sure of one thing. I wasn't going to let them off the hook so easily. The meeting was set for the following week. I spent the time leading up to it with a quiet sense of determination. My thoughts kept returning to the moments I had spent with Tom in this house, and how those memories now felt so distant. I reminded myself that this wasn't just about the house. It was about my place in this family. I had spent years sacrificing my own needs, my own desires, for the sake of everyone else. But now it was my turn to stand up for myself. The day of the meeting arrived, and I dressed carefully. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of thinking I was nervous. I had already made up my mind. As I walked into the cafe where we agreed to meet, I saw William and Rachel sitting together. They looked a little uneasy, their eyes darting nervously as they saw me. But I didn't flinch. I walked over, sat down, and waited for them to speak first. Rachel cleared her throat, her expression more guarded than before. "Mom," she said, her tone far less confident than the last time we spoke. "We've been thinking things over and we want to make things right. We didn't realize how much this was hurting you." I looked at her, my eyes steady. "Didn't realize?" I repeated. "You've had plenty of time to realize, Rachel. This isn't something that just happened overnight. You and William made your choices, and now you have to live with them." William shifted in his seat, looking uncomfortable. "We didn't mean for things to go this far, Mom," he said. "We were trying to make things easier, but I see now how wrong we were. We just want to fix it." I took a deep breath. This was it, the moment I had been waiting for. "Fix it?" I asked. "It's not as simple as that. You can't just undo everything you've done. But if you really want to make things right, you're going to have to prove it." The room fell silent. I could feel the weight of my words in the air, but I didn't feel sorry. I had earned this moment. I had earned the right to take control of my life again. And I wasn't about to let them dictate how it would go from here on out. As the silence hung between us, I could feel the weight of my words pressing down on them. William looked at me, his eyes searching for something, but I wasn't going to give him an easy way out. I had been silent for too long, too willing to forgive. But this time I wasn't going to be the one who backed down. "I've worked my entire life for this," I said, my voice unwavering. "And I'm not going to let anyone take it from me. Not you, not Rachel. If you want to make things right, it's going to take more than empty promises. It's going to take actions." Rachel shifted uncomfortably, but she didn't speak. William opened his mouth to say something, but I raised my hand, stopping him. "No more words," I said firmly. "I've had enough of words. I need to see you show me that you care. You need to prove to me that this is not about control, but about respect." I could see the realization in their eyes. This wasn't a game anymore. This was real. And I wasn't playing by their rules anymore. I had my own. "You both need to understand," I continued, "that this is not about just the house. It's about who I am in this family. It's about the years I spent supporting all of you, making sacrifices, always putting others first. But now I'm putting myself first." William and Rachel sat quietly, their silence telling me everything I needed to know. They had underestimated me. They thought I would just roll over, that I would let them walk all over me because I was older, because I had lost Tom. But I had more fight in me than they realized. "I'm not asking for a handout," I said, my voice steady. "I'm asking for what's mine. And I'm going to make sure I get it." William finally spoke, his voice softer now. "I didn't know it had gone this far, Mom. I'm sorry." But his apology wasn't enough anymore. It was too late for apologies. "Sorry doesn't fix this," I replied. "But you have a chance to make things right. If you're serious about this, you're going to have to show me, not just say it." I stood up to leave, my heart steady. I knew they were both still processing everything, but I didn't care. I had made my point. I wasn't going to be a victim anymore. I wasn't going to let them take my life from me. I was in control now. I wasn't going anywhere. Not until I got what I deserved.